Use the content 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Seelavanta uso kottita panchupadanakkhandha aniccato dukkhato rogato gandato sallato agato abadato parato palokhato sunyato anattato moyoniso manasikatabbati. Dear Venerable Dhamma friends, this quotation I took as the topic of the day's Dhamma talk is from the Seelavanta Sutta or Seelavanta Sutta you find in the Samyutta Nikaya, Nidana Vagga, and that is what we used to base in these Kalalgoda Dhamma talks. So, before going to the today's specific topic, that is to say, how to observe the feelings in these the 11 dimensions, I would like to make some early remarks of the significance of this particular discourse. This is a dialogue between Venerable Mahasariputta and the Kottita. And this dialogue appear like one person is asking, other person is answering, as if a disciple and the teacher like. But both of them are fully enlightened and fully capable and already renowned to disciples of the Buddha in the contemporary time of the Buddha. So why in the first place Venerable Mahakottita is asking this question, presenting this question to Venerable Mahasariputta? Is it just to know or just to have a topic, presenting a topic? And when Venerable Mahasariputta is giving the answer, is it something teaching or taking the opportunity of this question and to teach us, the people appearing after 2600 years, so that he is taking the opportunity. Still it's an open case, one to understand. For it's easy for us to think that they are talking out of compassion because many people do not know how to ask a question. Asking question is a qualified job. With the perplexed mind we can ask question, but it never get defined or pointed. Only the clarity of the mind can raise the question, and they only can ask a meaningful question with the relationship with the beginning, the middle and the end. So that may be the reason in sometimes the Buddha himself create another Buddha, so that another Buddha is asking question from this Gautama the Buddha, and then dialogue is happening. That means all the questions that we are raising have some weak points, because our mind is in the perplexity, mind is not calm and quiet, and we at the below level or inferior level of the Buddha, inferior to the fully enlightened being, we tend to think, whenever you become enlightened, there won't be questions. No, there are questions. After enlightenment, you have to have the question. That is not for the wisdom, but is out of compassion. So that part we find very difficult to define, very difficult to understand, why these enlightened beings asking question and giving answers in such a very sharp way. That is because of the compassion. So when I am associating with Venerable Jnanarama, I ask him, what is this? What is the use of this dialogue between two fully enlightened beings? Then his interpretation was, that is to set examples, role models for the followers like us, so that we can understand, we must learn the art of asking a question without a self, without a conceit, without a desire. Otherwise, each and every question we are raising, coming out of egotistic base, coming out of conceit, coming out of desire. But we find difficult to trace it. We think we are very honest, very simple and very innocent. It is a question. But the day you understand your question, you become anagami. Once you become anagami, only you can understand what is the meaning, why you are being propelled, and what is the motivation. You are to talk, you are to act, you are to think. Till that, we are asking enormous questions, and they are very innocent, they are very genuine, but asking question for an unenlightened being itself is a defilement. After enlightenment, still they ask question. It's not for the sake of a joke, but it is out of compassion. So therefore, this is not a teaching class or tutorial class for Venerable Kottita. From Venerable Sariputta, both of them are very, very well-versed people. The question is, whenever you have certain amount of moral responsibility or moral restraint, what must one should do? And if we are being asked with this question, we would say, if the sila, the moral restraint is complete, go to samadhi, and once the samadhi is complete, go to panya. Because we have been taught sila, samadhi, panya. So therefore, if you are a book weevil or a theoretician with the book knowledge, if someone is going to ask you that after sila what you have to do, you will say definitely, safely, samadhi, and after samadhi go to panya. But here the question is, Seelavanta Maha Sariputta, Katame Dhamma Yonsu Mansikādabba. Venerable Sariputta, after you became a moral restraint and certain amount of moral training, what you should contemplate upon. And Venerable Sariputta, as an answer, he says, Seelavanta Kottita, Panchupadanakkhandha, Aniccato, Dukkhato, Rogato, Gandato, Sallato, Agado, Abadato, Parato, Palokato, Sunyato, Anattato, Yonsu Mansikātabba, Yesayati Edang, Kaya Anupassana, Kaya Rupakkhandha, Rupupadanakkhandha, Vedana Upadanakkhandha, Sanya Upadanakkhandha, Sanskara Upadanakkhandha, Viññāna Upadanakkhandha. It's a complete answer. But directly go into Vipassana. Without mentioning the sequential order. And therefore, this is a second point we can make why it is so. And the third aspect, not specifically for this particular discourse, but it says, whenever you are to contemplate, you must start with materiality. Kaya, Rupa Upadanakkhandha, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Viññāna. But in knowledge, whenever you are to understand something, it is Nama Rupa Pariච්ඡeda Jnana. First Nama and then Rupa. But in practice, Rupa Nama Pariච්ඡeda Jnana. So completely the presentation is in a different way. We can see whenever the Buddha is going to present, he starts with the eye, ear, nose, tongue, the body and the mind. But whenever the practices happen, you start with the body and then you have to go along with the tongue, nose, ear and the eye. Because that is the most trickiest, most subtle, trivial, the tricky thing is the eye. So these kind of theoretical presentation and the practical end, the soft end, the starting point, they are pragmatic points. So, Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, selecting this particular discourse, he is clarifying all these points in the philosophical way before going to the content of the sutta, because if you are only doing book reading and theoretical understanding and theory only, then you will get a frame, and if you are going to talk, discuss or analyze it, that your frame will be a block for you to, whenever you go put into practice. Because the practical way is not the theoretical way it is being presented. Both are expressed by the Buddha. So that is the point where the theory understanding and then contemplation and direct experience, sutta me jnana, chinta me jnana, bhavana me jnana, it is not lenient, it is a complete matrix. So you have to start somewhere in a very lenient system. That is the way we have been trained in our schools. So we go it only with the one strand, with the one thread, and then you can learn. But it's not a single thread. There's so much of reciprocal, so much of relative. So after a long studies, theory and practice only, you can understand how difficult, how complicated for someone to understand this interrelatedness, connection. So what a kind of a challenge for the Buddha to explain this kind of a way to a normal commoner, putujjana, because he is always thinking about greedy, accumulation, linear system, never think on this kind of a way. So how much against the grain kind of a teaching. So when we individually going to take meditation as our way of life or meditation as a technique, we have to understand what the kind of evolution taking place in our mind. That is to say, be preparedness or open-mindedness. Don't get hard and fast with your theory understanding. Don't throw them away. There are some limited value in the theory, but theory by itself, theory for the sake of theory, it's make you idiot, make you a completely a block understanding about the interdependentness, relativity, cause and effect relationships. So therefore meditators, they are in a completely in between two worlds. One world is fully rational, fully lenient and full of theory. The other part, you have to live with the normal day-to-day life, and no theory you can apply, only you have to be pragmatic. But the Buddha still find a relationship between this complicated situation and the existential questions. So that is why these suttas are very important. And imagine it brings the message through 2600 years. Now when we put into practice, we can see what is the word meaning, what is the theoretical meaning, what is the literal meaning. And when you put into practice, how much your own theory become a limiting factor or difficult to sort them out. So under such circumstances, if someone continue to meditate, if I am to give more qualified way, if someone regularly meditating, that's a miracle. That's a miracle. Because it is so discouraging. If you are expecting results, or if you think in some rationality behind, everything has to shut off. So that is how value of meditative life. So therefore one has to understand the practice itself is a meritorious deed, and continuity or regularity is a kind of a thing even before you become enlightened. Whenever you try to do practice continuously, the Loku Hamdru used to say, more than human, the Devaloka or celestial beings are paying respect. More than the Deva, Brahma, higher realms pay respect because they can't understand how this kind of a person made up their mind to maintain regular timetable and practice. So therefore, you must be enlightened before practice like. You must have all the qualities, otherwise very difficult to maintain this regularity in the spiritual life. So, whether you understand and then practice, or you practice and then understand, completely gone tupsy-turvy way or in irony way. That's the way the Buddha presented the Four Noble Truths. He says, first you have to understand the Nirodha, the liberation, then only you can understand the Nirodha-gamini Patipada, the path. So imagine that kind of a thing to teach to a young child. It's a completely different task. Now we have our own way, we have our own reason why we should go for meritorial deeds and meditation and all the kind of, we have a hell of problems. We have been pressed, tensed and frustrated. Imagine if you are to pass this kind of a situation with sight of a teaching to a young child, we can't talk Seelavanta Avaso Kottita Panchupadana Kanda Yonaso Manasikatabba. You are completely out of the place. So how to pass it in such a way that you have to understand the gravity of this deep tradition and the way the Buddha tackled it. So that is because this is to make our background or backdrop. Where are we? What are we doing? How we can understand how much should we irrational or radical in this understanding. So it's a at last we have to say it's a matter of time. While keep on practicing, in my vocabulary I would say, you put forward a null hypothesis and keep on disproving it. Ultimately you arrive at the truth. And unfortunately enough, people take this null hypothesis as their treasure, their value. They are going to prove it rather than disproving it. That's the point where meditators miss the bus. Whatever the object you are taking, you are not going to recognize it, the object. You are not going to have your assumption with the object. You disprove. Object is not up to recognition, not up to assuming anything. It's just a pivotal value. More and more you practice, object will be null and void. More and more it becomes null and void, practice is advancing. You are more towards the less and less defilements. So therefore, our day-to-day values and in the meditative life values, they are contradictory. That is why it says Patisotagami or against the grain. That no one can assure by practicing meditation, by listening and kind of thing, I may be or should be against the grain. It's a completely electric. It's a completely impromptu, completely unpredictable. And whenever that shift happens from rational to irrational or along the flow and against the grain, possibilities there equally among every one of us. But our openness, our preparedness, that in the sense, faith, in the sense, the opposite of faith is the doubt, is the main thing. So we give theoretical understanding, we give rational understanding, we give practical understanding and try and against the whetstone, how much faith, how much confidence, or how much foresight we have, and that is the what more and more you practice, you assimilate kind of a faith. Sorry to say, that faith is not upon Buddha, it is not upon Dhamma, not upon Sangha, but your practice. Your own, I would say, trial and error, mistakes. When you go there, there's a kind of a accumulation. So that is already happened between Venerable Sariputta and Kottita, but still they find ways and means or teaching techniques for people like us. If possible, if ready for this open-mindedness, how to go through. So having said that, I would like to go to the today's talk. I would say Venerable Sariputta is recommending to Venerable Kottita, whenever you have your confidence about your faith, your moral restraint, or physical and verbal activity, or do away with misdeeds, then first you have to give attention to the materiality, the corporeal body, and that is called Rupa-khandha, Rupa-upadana-khandha, kind of your attachment to the materiality, we can say our corporeal body. You have to look at it in 11 ways, 11 facets. And there is, in the teaching of the Buddha, there is another 11 presented in other suttas, also called as 11 dimension. In quantum physics also, they started with 3 dimension, 4 dimension, now they have come up to 11 dimension. But hardly you can see the parallelism between the quantum physics 11 dimension and this aniccato, dukkhato, rogato, gandato, or in other places, the Buddha mentioned, Atita nagata pacchuppanna, olarika sukuma, hina pranita, ajjatta bahidda, dure santike. There's another 11 dimension. So, these are the different tools or techniques. Whenever problem happen, don't go only with your stereotype method. Have that as a 1/11th of your understanding. You have to understand another 10 methods are there. You have to look at it from all the viewpoints. Then only you can have a 3D picture or holographic like of a picture. Otherwise, whatever you are talking with partial understanding, and therefore your conclusion, your inferences are not qualified. So therefore you have to keep on practicing. So we'll assume now we know a little about how to look at the corporeality, your body or your materiality is impermanent. That is because usually the commoner take for granted everything is permanent. That's the point we come out with theories and formulas and all the kind of thing, permanent notion. That is because they look at an object, they never wait, they are not patient enough to look at it again and again. So therefore whatever they see, the superficial value appear like permanent, and before looking at it again, he or her mind is jumping to another object thinking this is permanent. So it is very swiftly changing one object to the other object, that is called kama guna, that is called indisciplined mind, is called untrained mind, shifting from one object to the other, where you only see superficial value. So you, at a time you see, you go through a lot of objects, lot of emotions, volitional activities, mental coloration, no bookkeeping, so everything looked halfway, partially, it's going to the permanent notion, contributing to the permanent notion, and your decisions and everything is based upon this permanent notion. In order to challenge it, what the Buddha says is, don't let so much of object to pass through, go through, select one neutral and practical, pragmatic object and look at it again and again. That's a complete contradictory to the sensuous gratification. Normally what we do is shifting from visual objects to the sound objects, the nose, smell, tongue and the taste, body and the comfort, and mental object, daydreaming, fantasizing, endlessly. That is what we call the commonest way or untrained mind. But if you wish to understand this, what the Venerable Sariputta is telling, he says, take your body, materiality, and take one aspect of it and look at again and again. Whenever you are avenued to, focus to, face with one single object and to look at it repetitively, it won't take so much of years someone to understand that object is changing. It is evolving. It is changed from one to the other. Because it is happening very quickly. But our permanent notion, take it as a challenge. When your object is changing, you feel nauseatic, you feel vomitish, you feel bored, you feel challenged, and therefore you consider this as something wrong with your meditation, or something wrong with your object, or something wrong with your mindfulness, or something wrong with the concentration. So therefore you complain, whatever the object, if I can manage to keep view it, that object is disproving by itself, it won't give any permanent notion. So therefore your observation, your presentation, your inference, everything is based upon the permanent notion. So much so, each and every result of your meditation, you consider as a challenge, you consider as a failure. So that part you must understand theoretically. Whenever you manage, it's not a joke, it's a very hard task to keep an object with, to keep an object in avenue with. Whenever it happens, it is disappointing. Each and every object is changing in transient nature. So your mind, if you are going to consider this as a challenge or failure or weakness of you, then whatever you do with the permanent notion is destructive for your meditation. There's another complication. In samatha meditation, this considered as a positive thing. In vipassana, we consider as the other way around. In samatha, we try to fix the object. We try to get the nimitta and try to take it as a pivotal point and apply the mind again and again to the same. And no promotion, no facilitating, not asking mind to see the evolving nature of the very object that you have taken as the pivot. But in vipassana, in other way, Venerable Sariputta's main teaching here is, whenever object is face to face, see it as impermanent, whether object is materialist, corporeal thing, or feeling, or perception, or volitional activity, or any consciousness. So, imagine a person who trained his or her mind to look at the object, nimitta, and don't worry, not much get tensed to see its evolving nature. So that is what we call the advancement in the meditation, specifically in vipassana, and ready to facilitate or ready to cope up with without losing the sight of it, or mindfulness or concentration or meditation. Just see its changing nature is not a challenge, it is not a threat, but it is an advancement, it's a lack of defilements. So therefore, how to facilitate aniccato? It's always, it has been suffixed with to. Aniccato, dukkhato, rogato, gandato, sallato. And to indicates, look at from that point of view. Look at from impermanent point of view. Look at from suffering point of view. Look at it like a disease. Look at it like a boil. Likewise, it is asking to change your perspective and look at the object with that kind of a colored glass or viewpoint. And when you are going to see from that viewpoint, it's a null hypothesis. More and more you practice, whatever the object come in view with, you see immediately it is changing into something other, or evolving into something else. So the day you understand it, then all the troubles, all the distractions, all the disappointments you complained so far became an endowment or blessing. Anything, whether it's a materiality or feeling or perception, anything you focus, it is changing. And that is in physics also, in other science also, wherever you go, this threat is there. Our knowledge completely based upon permanent notion. The wisdom based upon impermanent notion. So can we go from this knowledge to wisdom, or permanent notion to impermanent notion? There is no other way like mindfulness. No other way like satipatthana, established of mindfulness. So someone has to basically understand, theoretically understand this, and today we are going to see how this principle, if you are going to focus into a feeling rather than a materiality. The basic teaching, it says there are 4 aspects in the feeling, the material aspect: feeling, perception, volitional activity and the mind itself. So if we have certain amount of familiarity, certain amount of experience to look at the material object, the breath, or you are rising and falling of your abdomen, or you are when you are sitting at the touching point of the cushion, when you are walking, the touch of the ground of the soul. Whatever it may be, we in this context we consider as a materiality. If you see, repetitively if you see, they are evolving very fast. Whenever this evolution taking place, you are feeling, how do you feel this evolution itself or direct touch itself, also going to give a complete another shadow, just like the materiality. But in the commentarial exegesis and in the Abhidhamma way of exegesis, it says, materiality, if it is changing 1 time per second, mentality is changing 17 times. It's 17 times faster when compared to the materiality. I don't know from where they have taken the number 17, but indicates matter is evolving slower when compared to the immaterial, that means feeling, perception and volitional and the consciousness. So that is why first you train your mind with the materiality, that means your corporeal phenomena, and then look at it, and the day your mind is ready to accept this impermanent notion, this is the second grade. The next set of exercises, look at feeling from the same viewpoint in the impermanent notion, And there you can see the foolishness of the present day technological world, present day so-called developed world. They are chasing behind pleasure principle. They want to have only the pleasure. Feelings have many facets. So, people chasing behind this pleasure only principle is what we call the commoners. In that sense, we can look at the behavior of animals also. They have the same. They are also chasing behind the pleasure. So therefore, there's a hint. If you read the Tripitaka very deeply, pleasure principle is beastly, animal-like. If someone is chasing behind the pleasure principle, and that is the present day motivation, every aspect, politics, political, economical, social, all the technologies are chasing behind the pleasure principle. So the Buddha says it is mago, the mruga. Mruga means that beastly. So therefore each and every one of us is being driven by this beastly kind of motivation, and one part of us always chasing behind the pleasure principle. So therefore we can't say it is a personal weakness, it's a human weakness. Each and everyone has to raise the hand and accept. Our normal day-to-day standards, values are based upon this pleasure principle. Accepting that is not a weakness. If possible, accept it. We come to meditation center seeking pleasure. But when you come here, mosquitoes are there, dengue are there, dengue is there. So another pleasure, pain. Whatever the thing you go, you are being driven by pleasure principle. But at the end, each and every appointment will end up with disappointment. Even in the meditation. But if you are to understand in a deep sense, this is not an individual weakness, but I know each and every one of you is cursing yourself for your pleasure principle. That means you are disqualified to be a meditator. To accept it's a human quality, it's a life principle. That acceptance is not a weakness, it is not a negative or destructive or nihilistic to understand. But there's another part in our mind to understand the truth as it is, things as they are. So what is the relationship between this permanent notion and understanding things as they are? You can understand, you can sort this question through materiality, feelings, perception, volitional activities and the consciousness. So if you again come back to the feelings, feelings cannot arise or happen without proximate causes. Each and every feeling to arise, there is a cause. There is a specific causes. Not the materiality, not the perception, not the volitional activities, not the consciousness. Feelings has chakkuncha paticca rupecha uppajjati chakku viññānaṁ tinnaṁ sangati passo pasapacca vedana. So, whether you are enlightened being or not, in the deductive way, whether you are a beast or an animal, never mind, this is the way the story starts. The eye and the visual objects has to come avenued with, face to face with. Whenever these two come alone with, aligned with, then it gives rise to the consciousness to arise. That means consciousness cannot come into being without this eye and the visual objects, ear and the sounds. Each and every faculty has its external cause. Whenever they avenued with, the consciousness arises. And whenever the consciousness arises and the same event is going to repetitively, the same visual object, same eye, same eye consciousness, then only we call it is the contact. Three together come, and these are the causative factors for the feelings to arise. The feelings cannot by itself come up. So therefore, your body and your other basic factors are there. So feelings arise when and where the circumstances are there. So instead of chasing behind the pleasure principle or entertaining, if a person can look at that arising feeling with the prepared mind, he is the only person can understand whether it is permanent or impermanent. In untrained mind, what happens is, as and when the feeling arises, your likings and disliking come together with the feeling, and its camouflage the direct touch or direct understanding of the feeling. When compared to that feeling, if you take a neutral object like breath, your rising and falling of your abdomen, or when you are walking the left and the right, there's a lesser chances are there for the liking and disliking to arise, because it is material, it's a neutral, it is under your very nose. With that understanding, if you go to the feeling, you can say feelings are more swift. As and when the feeling arises, more than the materiality, there's a shadow, there's a perversion, there's a liking and disliking, and that disliking and liking is camouflage or block your direct understanding of the feeling as well as the object. So, whenever the feeling come into being in your meditation, your simple noting, simple labeling won't work. For materiality, simple noting and simple labeling work because there is no underlying tendency or directed disposition. So you can see the in-breath and out-breath, rising and falling, or any other left leg and right leg, you can keep it. But whenever the feeling arises, you will be taken for a ride, and likings and dislikings are there. So therefore, even if you note, you have to understand double-fold noting. What is happening at the tip of the iceberg, kind of a superficial part, and what is happening under the water, your likings and disliking. And when that happens only, you can see, you explore into understanding who am I. By mere understand the materiality, you can't figure it out, who am I, what is my likings and disliking, what is my personality. But whenever the feeling, the materiality comes, and as and when the feeling arises, if your directed dispositions or tendencies arises, the day you see, as and when the feeling arises, there is a kind of a liking and disliking, and how much you must get a distance, or with a neutral observer, how you have to be a neutral observer to understand as and when the feeling arises, there is a coloration of the mind, likings and disliking, and is it your conscious thing or subconscious thing, is a completely open issue. Even you do not know, or it is not your willful action, it is kind of the preconceived, directed kind of a disposition. And worst thing is, you think it is exactly the same for your partner, the person sitting close by, and you generalize your liking and disliking with your group, your family, your nation, the humans and everything. But not necessarily so. Your liking and disliking is completely independent of the seeing event, hearing event. This is, I would say, to make it more conspicuous, the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting kind of thing, object come from outside, and then only seeing can happen. But the liking and disliking coming from inside and going out. So these two what is coming from out and creating the seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. And for each and every such event, there is a projection from inside to the out in terms of liking and disliking. Or feeling-wise, we can say pleasurable feeling and painful feeling. So the day you understand, you can see how your mind is working, and instead of generalizing it, try to see the person sitting close by or your partner may or may not be with the same kind of likings and dislikes. So therefore we are living not in a universe, we are living in multiverse. I live in my universe and I think the other person also in the same universe, not necessarily. And your morning universe is not the evening universe. And your universe at the beginning of the phenomena is not the end of the phenomena. So much of evolution is taking place. So if you are looking at it, just by looking, just by passive observation, you can understand how fast this universe is rotating individually. So imagine, instead of looking from that point of view, you take a fastest vehicle and run around the world and try to see different objects and different sceneries, and then accumulating it, and where can we have a realistic understanding about what we are seeing. So instead the Buddha says, you sit down, reduce the number of objects come in, that means close your eyes, go to a silent place, sit in the position where no volitional changes are not necessary, let the object come into the mind door and look at it. See, with full of mindfulness as much as possible. That means less object and more mindful. There only you can see the influx of the object, no agenda. What is happening, what is going to happen, no one can predict. And at a time, so much of things are happening. Which one you are going to give the priority? Beyond your control. Whatever the thing you select, overwhelm you. And you will taken you for a ride. And again, when you come back to the normal situation, it is called resilience. How quickly you can come back to at-home situation. And under such circumstances, you can see the flux, how it happens. And so you have to slow down as much as possible and increase the mindfulness. When it is happening, you can see how is the work of the mind with so much of restraint, without looking, without hearing, without smelling, without touching, without volitional activity of the body, and let it happening, and so much of feeling itself arising in such a fast way. So how to understand the undermined tendencies, and if you have to see the underlining, undermining, perverted tendencies, you have to look at it as if someone else. If you look at it, this is my observation, this is my meditation, that you are with the prejudgmental idea. So that observation itself is the distance. It is usually for the feeling it says, you get a distance from your feeling and observe it. So you must be away from your day-to-day responsibilities and duties. Just calm down and observe it. And there you can see from morning to evening, or we leave it as the morning to evening, take 1 hour and try to keep a bookkeeping, how much changes are happening, how much events are taking place, so how much poor and lack of equipments for us to see through it. So therefore, slow down and increase the mindfulness. One day, you can keep certain amount of bookkeeping, how much the coloration takes place regarding the likings and disliking. When and where it is happening, when and where you are sharp enough to understand your likings and disliking for each and every incoming object, you may see whether it is a preconceived or completely fixed agenda, or you have any willpower, you have any controlling power. Can you interpret terms about what is happening? Or in the sense, is the situation under your control? Is it governable? More and more you observe it, you will see it's a governability, it's a controllability, it's a completely discouraging. But more and more you put forth effort, you can observe there are some relationships happening. So only you have to get a distance and observe that getting a distance from the feelings is the most difficult thing, because we have been accustomed to recognize it, each and everything happening. So therefore, if you are sharp enough, if you can go train thin slicing of time and see a general, pleasurable feeling arises, whenever such a pleasurable feeling arises, the liking happens. It's a universal law. Whenever liking happens, you have a permanent notion and attachment for this kind of a feeling. So whenever that feeling is disappearing, dislike can happen. The pleasurable feeling, appearance is good, pleasurable, liking, but whenever it is changed, your notion is to be permanent, you wanted to have it continuity, but it is not answering your ask and waiting to your order, it's change. Whenever changing, each and every pleasurable feeling end up with pain. So therefore, if someone is chasing behind this pleasure principle, they are chasing behind pain, suffering. Not only suffering for them, they are creating suffering to the world. They are creating the global warming. They are creating environmental pollution, because they fail to understand the pleasurable feelings are not permanent, even though they wish to have it like that. Whenever it is becoming otherwise, your pain arises. So under such circumstances, if you look at the painful feeling, when and where it arises, you become discouraged, dislike happens. You are not waiting to see its changing nature. If you are waiting, if you are patient enough, each and every pleasurable, painful feeling end up with the pain, pleasure. So therefore, your normal approach is not to deal with the painful feeling. So you at the outset you try to push it off. That means you are pushing off the pleasure, the desirable feeling. So the object, painful feeling and pleasurable feeling, so much unpredictable. So the day you understand this pain and pleasure is such a cheating things, so then what to teach our children? What to learn in our classes, and what kind of a technology we must develop in order to have kind of a benevolent well-being of a person, for you or for other people, for through technology or without technology. So without look at it from that viewpoint, vehemently chasing behind the technology, chasing behind the scientific research, and each and every time you are chasing behind scientific research and technology, you hate the present moment. If you are happy, if you are contented in the present moment, maybe on the materiality or feeling or perception, whatever may be, there is nothing to search about, nothing to research about. But more and more you research, more and more you search, that's a clear indication you hate the present moment. Whether you are research on the materiality, feeling, perception or whatever may be. So therefore, more and more you practice, you will understand that doing nothing, just being, is the contentment. So to say, if it is the contentment, each and every action we are going to do, we are disturbing, we are violating that contentment. So therefore, for such a person, if he or she is really concerned about one's own well-being, one's own healthy mental and physical situation, what to do and what not to do, you may make a completely different list or upside down kind of a list. So, but if you are going to share that with the commoners in the world, will be utterly desperate, get desperate because no one is happy to understand. They don't have time to listen to you. Consider you have gone to meditation and gone mad. Meditation is leading people to mad. Because you are now talking something unrelated thing. So continue again and again. That is why at the beginning I told, under such circumstances, if you can continue regularly your meditation is a miracle. With so much of multitasking, so much of responsibilities, so much of demands, when you continue one day you will understand not the message itself, profound, but the communication. The passing message to this kind of the bewildered world is so communication. And that is, we can say, Venerable Kottita to Venerable Sariputta communication and Venerable Sariputta to Venerable Kottita communication. Or from the Buddha to us. But inside, within yourself, also this communication problem is there. That's a split mind. One part of your mind is ready to accept permanent notion. Everything you based upon the permanent notion. The other part, there's a little fraction, it try to highlight impermanent. And it is not what you earn, it's your birthright. You have it. So these two are always in the wrestling, impermanent notion and permanent notion. So in this particular sutta, Venerable Sariputta is teaching, it is not limited to feelings. It can be materiality, feeling, person, whatever may be. Your aniccato or niccato, whether it is a permanent or impermanent, each and every moment, each and every sense, each and every impingement, each and every circumstances, each and every phenomena, you can put into. Whatever the way, wherever the starting point, you can understand with your practical understanding, go there. It is such a thrilling thing. Never it disproved. Always it is proving. Always it is reiterating. Look at from the impermanent notion, you see the truth. But it's bitter in taste, astringent in taste, sour in taste. So therefore you chase behind the sweet taste, even though it is wrongly conceived as permanent, you blindfold, you become blind and follow it. So therefore one day, when you keep on practicing, you will understand within a day how much you fertilize the permanent notion and feed it. How much you are feeding to the impermanent notion, how much you are fertilizing your impermanent notion. There's a slight changing, very low number of the impermanent notion, slowly it is increasing. So that improvement, the Buddha says, the particular yogi cannot comprehend. How much you have developed the impermanent notion, very difficult. But after long practice only, you can understand. Now you are slowly learning this impermanent notion, but the proximate cause for encouragement is association with the true friends, association with the noble people. They are some or the other, keep on practice. Continue to the practice is the criterion you can see. So if you can associate that kind of course we can't have Venerable Sariputta here, Venerable Kottita here, Venerable the Buddha. But among ourselves, there are some people, they are little more with Dhamma, and their secret is they look at the problem from the impermanent notion. But people with the permanent notion consider them as nihilistic, consider them as negative, consider them as non-productive, consider them as non-creative. But they keep on practicing. That sometimes appears like a threat to the normal world, but the yogi take them as a role model, and ultimately hope. When you keep on practicing, you yourself will be a role model for the others, so that the other blindfolded people, you can set an example. So see how many thought moments per day, or how many thought moments in your sitting posture, how many thought moments in your walking session, you are ready to accept this impermanent notion with respect to this Panchupadana-kanda, Rupupadana-kanda, Vedanupadana-kanda, whatever may be. The Sutta is a kind of a presentation giving tools from the different viewpoints. I think you people are the most qualified people to do it, because at least accepted in theoretical and deductive way. By keep on practicing, I hope one day you can verify it to yourself that how much it is true to look at this world phenomena as impermanent, and the day you try to prove it, there won't be any failure. It's a sure and short method. So with that remark, I would like to sum up today's talk. Hope this talk will give kind of encouragement for you to continue the practice in a regular way. Thank you very much for listening.